The morning sun streamed through the tall windows of the main lobby at Union National Bank, casting bright lines across the white marble and the steady shuffle of customers coming and going. In the middle of all this, Angela Carter, a black woman, in her early 40s, stood with quiet poise. She wore a simple navy blazer and comfortable flats, holding her purse close as she waited her turn. Angela noticed how some people received friendly good morning greetings from the staff, while others either got a forced nod or were barely acknowledged. From where she stood, it was clear the polished surface of the bustling bank masked some underlying tension. After a few minutes, Angela's number was called, and she stepped forward to the counter, where Rachel Thompson, a young teller, waited. Angela explained that she wanted to withdraw a large sum for a down payment on a new apartment and placed her neatly arranged documents on the counter. Rachel picked them up and began to look them over, her eyes lingering a bit too long over Angela's photo ID. Unlike with the other customers before her, Rachel's welcoming smile faded, replaced by a cautious, almost suspicious look. The air in the lobby suddenly felt heavier, and even some nearby customers seemed to shift uneasily, as if they sensed something was about to happen. Rachel paused, uncertainty etched across her face as she glanced over at George Martinez, a longtime supervisor who had worked at Union National Bank for over 20 years. Rachel spoke in a careful, almost robotic tone, asking George to review Angela Carter's paperwork while keeping her eyes trained on the forms. George stepped over, his expression unreadable, and he carefully began to inspect Angela's identification and bank statements. The friendliness that had once livened up the counter was now gone, replaced by a stiffness that spread between the two employees. Behind Angela, the line of customers grew restless. Some tapped their feet, others whispered to each other, shooting curious or impatient glances in her direction. A few people pulled out their phones, quietly aiming their cameras at the counter in case anything unusual happened. Every extra second that George and Rachel spent double-checking her documents only seemed to underline the doubt in the air. Angela, meanwhile, stayed composed. She answered each question with a steady, polite tone, using sir and ma'am even when the inquiries felt unnecessary. Still, it was impossible to ignore the feeling. She could sense suspicion hanging over her, thicker by the minute. What should have been an easy withdrawal began to feel like she was being put on trial in front of everyone. Just as the tension in the lobby seemed unbearable, Kevin Parker stepped up behind the counter. Kevin was a younger employee, only in his late 20s, but had already gained a bit of a reputation among staff and customers for his arrogant attitude. Without even looking Angela in the eye, he leaned toward Rachel and George, making a pointed comment about how it was interesting for someone to walk in and request such a large withdrawal out of the blue. He spoke just loud enough so that the crowd could catch every word, planting seeds of doubt about Angela's intentions. A couple of people nearby stifled nervous laughs, while others exchanged sideways glances that made it clear who they thought the real outsider was. In this situation, Angela felt the sting of his words. The glares and muffled laughs rippled through the room, and shame threatened to creep in, but she stood tall. Lifting her head, Angela spoke in a steady, strong voice. She explained, clearly and directly, that her request was within her rights as a customer and that her account had always been in good standing. The room fell quiet. Everyone waited for some outburst or angry reaction, but none came. Instead, Angela's steady confidence seemed to throw the staff off, leaving them visibly unsure for the first time. At that point, Diane Williams, the branch manager, strode out from her office with a determined look on her face. Her heels clicked against the marble as she called for everyone's attention. Raising her voice, she addressed the entire lobby, making it clear she wanted Angela Carter removed immediately. Diane claimed Angela was disturbing the peace and making other customers uncomfortable. She ordered 2 security guards to come over, their matching uniforms and serious expressions adding to the sense of authority. The room held its breath, some people looking on with disbelief, while others seemed to silently agree with Diane's decision. Angela, despite the mounting pressure, stayed calm. She reached into her purse, pulled out her phone, and dialed a number with steady hands. Ignoring the demands and stares swirling around her, she quietly spoke into the phone, her voice steady but firm. The unexpected move caught everyone off guard, especially the bank. Employees who were visibly confused and unsure of how to proceed now. Even Diane hesitated, recognizing there could be more to Angela than she had assumed. In that moment, the atmosphere in the bank grew even heavier, crackling with energy, as if something important was about to unfold that could change not only Angela's day, but the future of the branch itself. On the other end of the phone, Robert Greene, a senior executive at Union National Bank's main office, picked up without delay. Angela spoke to him in a low voice, explaining the situation in a few direct sentences. Robert's response was just as quick, clear and supportive, promising to handle matters right away. The call lasted less than a minute, but by the time Angela lowered her phone, the entire dynamic inside the bank had flipped. Several staff members exchanged anxious glances, suddenly aware that things were no longer in their control. Diane Williams, still trying to project authority, called out instructions in a tone meant to be steady, but now sounded uncertain. When Robert's name came up, first in Angela's phone call, then whispered by a bank teller, the nervous energy in the lobby grew. People started wondering aloud who Angela really was, and why a director as powerful as Robert Greene would take her call so seriously. Even the security guards hesitated, no longer sure whose orders to follow. Meanwhile, Angela's calm grew, even more powerful, making it clear she was not just another customer. The employees shifted their stance, feeling for the first time that their quick judgments had set into motion something they could never reverse. Meanwhile, back at Union National Bank's main offices in downtown Chicago, Robert Greene wasted no time. As soon as the call ended, he called together a team from customer relations and compliance, pushing them to pull up every complaint ever filed about that branch. He told security to lock down the building. Nobody was to leave, and all records had to be preserved for review. The office, usually humming with the usual weekday activity, instantly felt the weight of urgency as news of the incident spread. Employees began to whisper, speculating about what could have happened to cause such a strong reaction from upper management. Word traveled quickly to the bank's boardroom upstairs. Martha Ellis, Union National's president and a well-known figure in American finance, was brought up to speed. One of her assistants handed her a tablet showing a live stream from the branch lobby where cell phone footage was starting to surface online. As Martha watched, her eyes narrowed with disbelief, then hardened with anger at the unfolding events. She demanded a clear timeline, asked who was involved, and requested policy documents. Martha's message was firm. The bank's reputation was built on trust, and she would not allow any discrimination to go unchecked, not under her leadership. Back at the Chicago branch, the room fell into a hush as Robert Greene walked through the glass doors, his presence quiet but commanding. Heads turned automatically, and a path cleared down the center of the lobby. Robert's sharp gaze moved from Diane Williams to George Martinez and then to Kevin Parker, lingering just long enough to make each person feel the weight of the situation. Without raising his voice, he announced that Angela Carter was to be released immediately and apologized publicly for the way she had been treated. He then directed all employees involved to remain on site for a full investigation. The atmosphere shifted in an instant. Diane, George, and Kevin each felt an icy, Shock moved through them, their earlier sense of control totally gone. Around them, customers stared with wide eyes, realizing they had just witnessed something out of the ordinary, a powerful figure openly holding his staff accountable right there in front of everyone. Nobody made a sound. The tension and embarrassment hanging in the air made it clear this was a turning point, not just for those directly involved, but for the entire branch. People began to understand that change, long overdue, might finally be starting within the organization. After a tense pause, Robert Greene turned to face the crowd and addressed both the staff and the customers in a calm voice. He explained that it was time for everyone to know the whole truth. Then, turning to Angela Carter, he publicly announced that she was actually the Chief Executive Officer of Union National Bank. For a long moment, nobody moved. The news felt unreal. The employees stared at Angela, suddenly grasping the gravity of their actions, while customers exchanged shocked whispers. Some staff members even took a shaky step back, surprised that the woman they had just dismissed and judged was, in fact, their highest leader. Even Diane Williams, who had been so confident earlier, looked as if she could not believe what she was hearing. The entire bank lobby seemed frozen in place. The embarrassment shifted instantly from Angela to every employee who had looked down on her, and the weight of the scandal settled over the room. Angela, though, stayed steady. She held her head high and met the eyes of her staff one by one. There was no gloating. Instead, her look conveyed a quiet promise, a commitment to make things right and to lead with fairness. The atmosphere felt changed for good, as if a lesson had just begun for everyone inside those walls. Without waiting any longer, Robert Greene addressed the group, his words even more direct now. He made it clear that Diane Williams, George Martinez, and Kevin Parker would be held fully responsible for their discriminatory actions. Robert explained that each would be part of a thorough investigation and that the bank would follow strict procedures to determine the right consequences. The three employees stood in silence, their faces pale, realizing for the first time just how serious their choices had been. It was one thing to face a complaint, it was quite another to answer for their behavior in front of the entire organization. Angela Carter stepped forward to speak, her tone both steady and heartfelt. She told the room that this sort of behavior would never be allowed to continue at Union National Bank. She talked about the importance of respect and inclusion, promising everyone there that the company would take concrete steps to make sure everyone felt safe and valued. The words hit home, not just for the employees being investigated, but for everyone taking it all in. Little by little, the energy shifted. Where there had been fear and tension, there was now the start of honest reflection. People realized they could be part of something better, and hope began to grow in place of the earlier embarrassment. Soon after the events at the branch, word spread across every department of Union National Bank and quickly caught the attention of people outside the organization too. News outlets picked up the story, and within hours, conversations about what had happened were happening online and around dinner tables. Customers, employees, and even former staff began to talk openly about the culture at the bank, pushing for answers and demanding that real changes be made. It no longer felt like just another workplace issue. Instead, it became a big moment for the whole company, and Angela Carter's name started showing up everywhere. People now saw her as someone willing to stand up for justice, whatever the cost. Meanwhile, things were very different for Diane Williams, George Martinez, and Kevin Parker. The three who had once felt so sure of themselves now found their colleagues pulling away and avoiding their eyes in the hallway. Friends who had always stood by them started to keep their distance. The looks they got were full of disappointment and blame. In a matter of days, their lives had changed completely. The confidence they once had was replaced by regret, and it was clear that the mark this story left on their careers would never go away. The next morning, Angela Carter scheduled an urgent meeting in the main auditorium at Union National Bank's headquarters in Chicago. Every single employee received the notice, no exceptions, so people from top leadership all the way down to new interns made their way in, filling every row of seats. The room buzzed with nervous chatter. Everyone understood that what happened yesterday was big, and nobody knew exactly what to expect now. When Angela stepped onto the stage, the room fell quiet. She did not use a script or speak with formal distance. Instead, she told her story in her own words, describing how it felt to be singled out because of who she was, right inside the company she led. As she spoke about embarrassment, anger, and disappointment, her honesty reached everyone. People looked at her and then at each other with new eyes, some wiping away tears, some dropping their heads in shame. Angela made it clear this was not just about her own pain, but about the kind of bank she wanted Union National to become. She said it was time for everyone to take ownership of the culture they created together. The silence that followed was heavy, but felt full of possibility. Maybe, after everything, things really could change for the better. Angela took a steady breath and continued, laying out a detailed new plan for changing the entire culture at Union National Bank. She made it clear that from this point on, discrimination of any kind would have zero tolerance in the company. She went through each point with purpose, describing stricter rules for ethics, mandatory training for everyone, from those just starting out to those who sat on the executive board, and new ways for people to report problems safely and without fear of backlash. Angela emphasized that these changes were not just words on paper, but real steps meant to make everyone feel respected every single day. As her speech continued, people in the crowd seemed to wake up to what was possible if everyone pulled together. Some started whispering to each other about things they had seen or felt in the past, realizing maybe it was time to challenge their own views. Angela's words got people thinking and looking inward, but she also gave them hope that things could truly be different this time. After Angela finished, Robert Greene walked up and let everyone know that these promises had the full backing of the entire leadership team. He said Union National Bank would prove to the whole country what respect and equality looked like in action. At that moment, the entire room burst into applause, sending out a wave of shared excitement and hope that this was the beginning of real change. As the new policies started to take shape inside Union National Bank, things changed even more for Diane Williams, George Martinez, and Kevin Parker outside of work. The news story had traveled far by now, and people everywhere were talking about what they had done. Former co-workers stopped inviting them to lunches, and professional groups took their names off future events. Calls and emails that used to come every day became rare, then stopped altogether. Hardly anyone wanted to be connected with them any longer, afraid of what others might think. Their social circles closed in, not because of anything official, but from the steady silence of friends pulling away. It was this quiet distance, spreading day after day, that stung the most, much more than any warning letter or suspension could. Diane, George, and Kevin each tried to find a way back, but opportunities faded as quickly as they appeared. Every morning now started with regret, and every night ended in reflection. The respect and confidence they once felt had slipped away, replaced by a kind of loneliness they never expected. Angela Carter's words about responsibility echoed in their thoughts, giving them no rest. The lesson was clear and lasting in ways they never imagined. Angela Carter's story quickly spread beyond the walls of Union National Bank. Soon, her name was all over the country, showing up in magazines, talk shows, and town hall meetings, always connected to conversations about standing up to unfair treatment and pushing for a more just America. It was not just the bank community looking to her for inspiration anymore. People everywhere began to see her as a symbol of courage. Her face appeared on posters for national campaigns, and she was invited to share her story at big conferences on racial equality and respect. Folks from all kinds of backgrounds listened and found a bit of themselves in her struggle. Stories started coming out from other companies, schools, and neighborhoods. Everyday people finding the strength to speak up after hearing about Angela's fight. She was more than just a leader at her bank now. She became a voice for movements calling for big changes in the way things were run across the United States. Angela did not stop after the attention faded either. She used every bit of her new platform, standing up front at protests, joining hands with organizations that fought against deep-rooted racism, and reaching millions through social media. Her words pulled in crowds, sparked real talks, and got people thinking about how they could be part of the solution. The push for equality was catching on fast, and it all seemed to build from Angela's simple, brave choice to speak up when it mattered most. Meanwhile, Diane Williams, George Martinez, and Kevin Parker found themselves talked about in ways they never expected. In training sessions all over the country, their stories were brought up as cautionary tales, reminders of how prejudice and stubborn pride could wreck a career and damage a whole company's reputation. Their names were no longer just familiar from workplace emails or holiday parties. Now they came up in conversations as warnings for new hires about the importance of fairness and respect on the job. It was not just a matter of reputation either. Court cases and internal investigations stacked up quickly. Each one demanded their attention, pulling them into conference rooms with lawyers or making them face a judge to answer for what had happened. Every interview and review was another painful trip back over old mistakes and missed chances to do better. Day after day, reminders piled up of opportunities that were now gone for good. As their legal troubles dragged on, the world outside watched closely, determined not to let the case fade away. People wanted to see real accountability. Every headline, every update served as a reminder that what happened mattered. For Diane, George, and Kevin, there was no easy escape from what they had set in motion. The changes at Union National Bank started to show up in real, everyday ways, not just in new rules or speeches. People noticed it at the teller windows and in meetings with loan officers. Staff members treated everyone with more patience and empathy than before. When it came time to hire or promote employees, managers cared about more than years of experience or sales numbers. They began to look closely at how workers treated their colleagues and clients, making diversity and respect a real part of the job, not just something mentioned in handbooks. For the staff, this was a big shift. Training sessions encouraged open conversations, and employees who might have stayed quiet before now felt safe sharing their own ideas. Even casual conversations in the break room seemed warmer and more inclusive. It was not perfect overnight, but there was a noticeable lift in spirits and teamwork. When reviews came around, being fair and respectful counted just as much as hitting targets. Customers picked up on all of it too. People walking into the main branch on Michigan Avenue or any of the other offices across Chicago found the vibe different. They felt welcome instead of rushed and valued instead of ignored. Word got around, and soon stories of Union National's new approach inspired other banks and companies all over the country to check their own practices. What started as a difficult turning point soon began to spark good changes far beyond the bank's walls. The national news outlets stayed glued to every stage of the rebuild at Union National Bank. Local and national reporters kept stopping by the branches, wanting to see for themselves if all the changes were really happening as promised. Articles popped up in big newspapers, with Angela Carter featured front and center. She was invited to panels and talk shows, always asked what kept her going and how she stayed steady with so much responsibility on her shoulders. Her answers painted her as not just a boss, but someone real, somebody who wanted something better for everyone, not just for show. People all across the United States followed these stories, hoping that this wave of equal treatment and respect was here to stay, and not just a short-lived idea. They talked about it online, at work, and even over family dinners, wondering if maybe their own workplaces could start changing for the better too. Still, things behind the scenes were not as smooth as the headlines made out. Angela faced pushback from a few folks who were used to the old ways and did not want to let go. Sometimes the resistance was quiet looks in meetings. Other times it was outright complaints. She kept showing up though, showing everyone, friends and opponents alike, that she was not backing down just because the path was tough. Her determination started a ripple effect, making people think twice about staying stuck in the past. Step by step, the whole organization moved forward, carried by her steady belief that something better was possible. As the years passed, Angela Carter's journey became more than just a headline or a trend in American business. Schools and colleges all over the country added her story to their curricula. Teachers brought up what happened at Union National Bank when they talked about empathy and standing up for others. Even big corporations started using her example in employee workshops about fairness and community responsibility. It was not uncommon to walk into a classroom or conference room and see her name on presentation slides or in textbooks, showing people of all ages what real leadership and resilience looked like. Young people from all kinds of backgrounds related to Angela's challenges and how she turned those hard moments into something positive, not just for herself, but for everyone around her. She represented the possibility of change, no matter where someone came from or what barriers they faced. Her story reached far beyond the United States too. It was translated into many languages and used by advocates in other countries who were also fighting for fairness and dignity. Angela's experience sparked conversations across borders, reminding folks that the struggle for equality was something people everywhere could understand. Because of her, a new wave of leaders learned to face their own challenges with courage and a sense of purpose, carrying her message forward into the future. At the height of her impact, Angela Carter decided the time was right to bring people together in a way that had never been done before. She organized the Unity Now Summit in downtown Chicago, and invitations went out across the country. It was not just CEOs and politicians who showed up. Community organizers, teachers, students, and all sorts of regular people filled the hall. The room buzzed with anticipation, each person hoping to be part of something that might finally push the needle toward fairness and understanding. When Angela took the stage, the entire audience went silent, hanging on every word. She spoke honestly about her struggles and victories, but focused most on hope for what America could still become. You could see tears in the eyes of longtime activists, and cheers broke out more than once as she reminded everyone that real change was possible, but only if they worked together. Her words reached past the walls and into the hearts of everyone listening. After the official speeches, people crowded around Angela, ready to share their own stories. Some thanked her for inspiring them to fight discrimination at their jobs or schools. Others spoke about finding new purpose after hearing about her journey. There was laughter, a few more tears, and a clear sense that this was now a shared mission, proof that a movement could spark from the bravery of one person, but its real power grew from the strength of many people joining in. The main branch on Michigan Avenue, which used to be known for making people feel unwelcome, slowly became a place people actually looked forward to visiting. Whether someone was opening a savings account or just cashing a paycheck, the staff made sure every customer was treated kindly and fairly. The entire culture at Union National Bank changed from the inside out. Now, When new employees started, they learned right away that upholding dignity and fairness was as important as counting dollars or balancing the books. Nobody forgot what had happened in the past, but those old stories of discrimination were told only to remind everyone to stay vigilant so nothing like that could happen again. Angela Carter, now respected well beyond the world of banking, continued to guide others. Students reached out for advice, and even seasoned professionals turned to her when they needed help with tough decisions about ethics. Her influence was woven into the very fabric of the institution, reminding everyone around her that real success had little to do with titles or awards. Instead, greatness showed up every time a person chose respect and fairness, no matter how big or small the moment. With these new values set firmly in place, a feeling of optimism spread within the bank and throughout the community. People could finally believe that a better future was not just some far-off dream, but a real goal they could work toward together, day by day.